you?
really well. It's been a lovely day here today. So yeah, I've been out in the sunshine, which has been great.
Gorgeous. Where are you in the UK right now?
Yeah, down in London. So
Oh,
yes,
how lovely.
a few days
Well,
down
it's
here.
sunny in Scotland too, but a little bit blustery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
C'est
So
normal.
exactly. Welcome. And I think we should introduce ourselves to those who haven't met us before. So there will be some people who haven't met me or maybe yourself. So I think if we just start with the introductions, that would be great. And then we can jump into our 3 pairings for tonight.
Okay.
So my name is Svetlana and I'm the founder of the Cheese Lady Shop. We are based down in Haddington. We are an award-winning cheese specialist, and I'm the founder, the author of our latest book on cheese, which talks about how to learn to appreciate and enjoy cheese, how to pair it with wine and things like that. So that is very briefly about me. Can you please tell me about yourself?
Of course, yeah. So I'm Claire Blackler. I'm a Master of Wine. I am a wine and spirits educator, and I founded Case Studies Wine School, which offers wine and spirits courses and tasting events.
Fabulous. Master of Wine. Check you out.
Wine, yeah. I must admit, I was very intrigued, Svetlana, by the exclamation mark that you put in brackets in your email after Master of Wine.
I just think it's fabulous. I don't know many masters of wine, but I know you, and I think it's just fabulous to know somebody with such a high status. How many masters of wine are there now in the world? I think it was just only a few hundred.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's 496 now, maybe 495, 496, something. Yeah, around just shy of 500 anyway. So yeah.
That is incredible. I think it's just a fantastic achievement. Yeah, there aren't many of you in the entire world. And I think to reach that level is just absolutely worth of an exclamation point. So great. So thank you so much for joining me today. And when we were talking about doing this mini masterclass, we were kind of hoping to give to people who are going to watch it a little bit of value and give them some tips on how to enjoy cheeses and wines together, how to pair them. So maybe we'll give them some tips and kind of highlights of what they can take away with them today and take it into their everyday life. And they will be pairing cheeses and wines better from now on. So today we're going to showcase 3 different pairings, and we do have a couple of different versions of the same kind of pairing, and we'll tell you all about it. So we're going to try 3 cheeses and 3 different wines, but actually it'll end up being 6 cheeses and 6 different wines, because I have a traditional combination of cheeses and traditional kind of classic wines of the genre, and Claire has vegetarian cheeses that are very similar to the ones that I'm gonna have, and she has kind of a play on the same wines that I have. I hope that makes sense. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the first pairing that we're going to try right now, we're going to start with our goat's milk cheese and a zesty light white wine combination. So for the goat's milk cheese today, I've got myself some Valencay. So a very classic goat's milk cheese from the Loire Valley in France. And there are many, many different shapes of different goat's milk cheeses that come from that area of France. It's very famous for goat's milk cheeses, and Valencay is just one of them. So when we look at Valencay, I have it here attached to my biscuit because it's so soft, and if I didn't put it on the biscuit, it would be attached to my plate. So the highlights of Valencay, it's a soft cheese, and it's got a lovely thin skin on the outside, which is edible. It's mixed in with a little bit of vegetable ash, and it makes it edible and delicious. It's just there to encase the cheese. Under the skin, we'll find a little bit of a cream line, which gives it that dense creaminess on the palate. And inside, we find a snowy white base of the cheese inside, so the core, and that is very nice and creamy again, but with a slight crumble to it, not quite as glossy as the base under the cheese. So let's have a taste, and if anybody is watching us, you can taste along and enjoy this. Give it a little try. A very beautiful paste, covers the mouth, just makes it kind of play and explode with flavor. There's a lot of herbaceousness I find with these kinds of cheeses. There's a little bit of nuttiness, and there's still a little bit of zing, because goat's milk cheeses, they start off very, very zingy, they're very young, and then as they ripen, the flavors kind of get more sophisticated and they get a little bit denser and more nutty. So this Valencay, I would say, is semi-ripe. It still has a little bit maybe of time it can go, but it's got this lovely sophistication going on in the flavor as well. And Claire has a white Nancy. So that's another goat's milk cheese. And that's now from England, from Somerset. It's made a little bit in a similar way, but the base, I would say, is a little bit more crumbly. That's more of a highlight there. And the skin on the outside is a bloomy rind, so like on a brie or a camembert. And again, it's edible and it'll give it a mushroomy note. So as far as the cheeses go, today I'm going to try my cheese with this very classic. Can you see that, or is there?
Just
a little different time. It's a Sauvignon Blanc. Not a great light here. It's a Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley. So as they say, what grows together goes together. That was my idea here, and I know I've tried this combination before. It's absolutely spectacular. So I didn't want to mess with perfection, so to speak, in my case. So I'm trying my Valencay with a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc. And as you would expect, what would you expect in a Sauvignon, Claire?
Okay, so there are a few reasons why this pairing works so well, I believe. Absolutely what you've said there, what grows together goes together, is a great rule of thumb to follow when it comes to food and wine pairing. And of course, ultimately what we're doing here, which is cheese and wine pairing. The reason, however, that this cheese works really well with this wine comes down to a few key characteristics in the Sauvignon Blanc. Firstly, its weight. Sauvignon Blanc is a light to medium bodied wine, so it goes perfectly with this cheese, which is really quite light in its texture. It's not the most dense or rich, nutty kind of cheese. It's more of a light, fresh style of cheese. So you're pairing a light-ish wine with a light-ish cheese. So you're complementing the two characteristics that way. The other reason it goes so well, the cheese does have a fairly creamy, sort of fatty texture to it as well, which complements the acidity in the Sauvignon Blanc really well. This Sauvignon Blanc, particularly a Sancerre, tends to be very high in acidity. And so you've got that lovely freshness in the wine to cut through the cheese and reduce any sort of cloying or fatty sensation that you might have on the palate. And the third reason why these two go so well together, it comes down to the flavor. You mentioned the word herbaceous as you were describing the flavor and texture of your cheese, and that's exactly what you get in a Sauvignon Blanc as well, is this lovely sort of herbaceous character in the wine, which complements the herbaceous characters in the cheeses. I've picked, to go with the white Nancy, I've picked a Bacchus. Can you see? Yeah. So this is a Bacchus.
Blurry a little bit. I think the same situation when we get close to the camera.
I know, exactly. How about
Where's that from?
Okay, so this is English. So this is English from Kent. So there we go. So it's a Kentish Bacchus. Bacchus is very similar to Sauvignon Blanc in that it has a similar weight to it. It also has similar flavour characteristics to it as well. So you can expect those same herbaceous characters in the Bacchus that you would in the Sauvignon Blanc. The only thing that I'm slightly concerned about, which could be a bit different, is the acidity level in Bacchus tends to be a little bit lower than it is in Sauvignon Blanc. However, this is an English version. English wines do tend to be high in acidity. We have one of the coolest climates in the world where grapes can actually ripen. And so therefore our wines, or English wines, do naturally have this high level of acidity to them. Okay, definitely got that. What's interesting about this wine, actually, it's got a touch of Chardonnay in it, a touch of barrel fermented Chardonnay, which gives it a little bit of extra weight. There's plenty of acidity in it. So I think this wine is going to be absolutely fine. Have you tried your Sancerre with your?
Yes, I have. It's gorgeous. I generally don't go for Sancerre if I have my choice, but I love this Sancerre because it has a little bit of creaminess to it. It's just so smooth. I find very acidic wines a little bit challenging, to be honest, but this one just has the right amount of acidity and this lovely smoothness, almost butteriness to it. So that's why I love it. And the combination is just glorious. I think one of the other tips we could give everybody today is about pairing cheeses and wines actually together. I like to talk about it quite a lot because I feel sometimes people kind of miss the trick a little bit with having cheeses and wines. They will have the cheese and then they'll drink the wine, or first they'll drink the wine and then they'll have the cheese. Whereas the magic actually happens in blending them. I don't know if you find that as well. So if you have a little bit of your cheese, just gently massage it on your palate, and before you swallow it, add a little bit of wine to that. And another little trick is to close your eyes. I think that's when you pay kind of the most attention. Obviously, if you're doing it by yourself, that's probably the best time when you can experience all the combinations that are happening on your palate. But another good thing is to do it with somebody so you can discuss what's happening. So we do that in our house quite a lot.
We do that in our house quite a lot. Funnily enough.
Cheese and wine, so we are.
Not necessarily cheese, food, wine, beer.
Yeah.
Whiskey, rum, we talk about it all.
It's all in the name of research.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think this is an excellent pairing. The flavors really complement each other. I'm actually genuinely really pleased with this. The flavors complement each other really quite nicely. You end up with this, the texture on the palate of both the cream, the cheese and the wine together is really rather pleasant, and it's a good match. Yeah, I like that.
Excellent. So the big takeaway: lighter weight cheeses, lighter weight wines go together. Goat's milk cheeses from France, from the Loire, go with wines from the same area, but then you can always just play on that kind of variation and go for English wines even, and English goat's milk cheeses. So I think that's a good tip for everybody.
Yes, good.
Excellent. Right, so let's move swiftly along. Can you still see me, Claire?
I can. I've just, bear with me 1 second. I'm going to switch my camera. Okay. I've just I've got my other camera set up, but I'm going to switch back to this one. Just
excellent. Well, I'll start talking about our cheese, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So our next combination, so for the traditionalists here, is going to be Munster, which is from Alsace, and I'm going to try it with some Gewurztraminer, which is another Alsatian representative, so a wine from Alsace. So Munster, I think it's one of the most glorious cheeses out there. Have you tried it, Claire?
I have, actually. Yes. Is that? Oh, there we go. Can you see me?
Yes, okay. I can see you great.
Good. Okay. Yes, I have tried Munster. It was a little while ago. I went to I was in France. Actually, I think I was in Germany, and we were right on that border with France and Germany, and one of the cheeses on the cheese board was Munster. Yeah.
Well, it is a glorious cheese, and as far as Alsatian cheeses go, it is the main cheese from Alsace. There will be some smaller kind of producers making other types of cheeses, but as far as the named protected cheeses go, Munster is the one made in Alsace. So what can I say about this cheese? It's made with cow's milk. This particular version is made with pasteurized cow's milk, and it has a washed rind on the outside. That means that these cheeses get washed with a brine solution when they get ripened. And washed rind cheeses are great. They have this fantastic and very memorable thing about them going on, and that's their aroma. They are also known to be stinky cheeses. So if you see a cheese with an orange, bright orange rind, or maybe slightly pinkish rind, and it's a washed rind cheese, that means it's going to be aromatic, also known as stinky. So we love them. And the rind is edible, by the way. It will be a little bit sticky in cases of kind of slightly softer cheeses. This one, if we touch, it has yield to it. So it's kind of semi-firm going on soft texture-wise. It's got a little bit of creaminess to it color-wise. So cow's milk, again, we know that. And aroma, we've already explored. I think now we can taste it. I just love that smooth creaminess on the palate. The rind gives it a little bit more nuttiness as far as the taste goes. But then if we pay a really close attention, we notice that there is a little bit of saltiness going on to this cheese. It's got that meatiness. And therefore, when we come to pair it with wines that have a little bit more sugar to it, a little bit more body, will come into play very nicely with it. And that's why Gewurztraminer from the same area works really, really well. It's got a little bit of sweetness. It's not technically a sweet wine, but am I correct?
Well, it can be a tiny. There could be a tiny little bit of sugar in there, which is giving us the sweetness. But it's certainly very fruity, very aromatic, which is one of the reasons why this wine is going to go so well with the cheese you have. I have a different one which I'll come on to in a minute. But when you've got a really pungent cheese like the Munster, then you need a wine that can stand up to it. And so this is bringing in a slightly different rule when it comes to food and wine pairing and cheese and wine pairing, is that you need to match the intensity of the flavor in your cheese with a wine that is going to stand up to it and is not going to get overpowered. And Gewurztraminer in particular is very pronounced in its character, so it should have no problem standing up to the Munster at all.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to try them together in just 3 seconds, but I also want to introduce your cheese. So Claire is going to be having a different washed rind cheese. She has one from England. Again, English cheeses, actually British cheeses in general, do tend to be a lot made more with vegetarian rennets. So if you are a veggie, British cheeses will be kind of more friendly and they will have more options for you. So the one that Claire is going to try is Maida Vale, and that's from Berkshire, just outside of London, basically. And it's made with cow's milk, and it's got also a bright orange rind. So it's a washed rind cheese. So there will be a lovely pungent aroma, lovely smelliness to it. But I find that it's a little bit more buttery on the palate. It's got a lovely nuttiness as well going on when you enjoy it with the rind as well. So now I'm going to try my combination.
What do you think?
I wish I could bite more, but it might take a little while longer to swirl everything together. I think it's amazing. Yes, so the sweetness in the wine definitely counteracts the saltiness of the cheese.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful pairing. It just, how do you beat that?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty incredible. I wouldn't say necessarily for me it creates a third flavor. I don't think it goes quite as far, but I think they are very great friends if we're talking about cheese and wine being either foes, friends, or lovers. I think they're definitely in the friends category there.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got a really good point about the sweet element to the wine as well. Even though it's barely noticeable and it's definitely on the drier side the wine sweetness scale, there is sufficient there to really pair well with the saltiness in the cheese, and that's another characteristic that's worth looking at, and it's why Sauternes and Roquefort work well. It's why Port and Stilton work well together as well, because you've got that saltiness in the cheese, which pairs really well with the sweetness, the sweet character in the wine.
So what wine are you going to try with your Maida Vale today?
Okay, so my wine has got a little bit of sweetness in it as well. Again, can you see?
I can see that better. Yeah.
Oh, you can. Oh, good. Oh, that was a worthwhile exercise then. So this is Philip Shaw, the Dreamer Viognier, and this is from Australia. What's really interesting about this is it's just 10% alcohol, which is good. Ooh. But it does mean that little bit of extra sugar, that sugar in here, that what isn't alcohol is actually sugar. So this does have a little bit of sweetness to it, which actually is absolutely perfect. It's a real, I'm really, really pleased with this pairing in particular. So Viognier, like Gewurztraminer, is aromatic. So it's got a very distinctive nose to it. It's very pronounced. So it stands up to the Maida Vale really quite nicely as well. And it's the wine is that's the one thing, that the cheese is really quite creamy and buttery, and the wine is as well. But because this is made in Adelaide, which has a fairly cool climate, this wine does carry just enough acidity to cut through the richness in the cheese. Mm-hmm. It's as I say, I'm really pleased with this. This isn't, I've not tried this wine before, so this was a bit of an experiment. As I said to you earlier, Svetlana, I've been out and about in town today, and we stopped and picked this wine up. I thought, I bet that'll be nice with the Maida Vale. So and it is. So
we're going to be trying it live for the first time on Facebook. That's great. Well, tell us your assessment of this wine. Do we need to all rush out and buy it? And if yes, where do we buy it?
Yeah,
I think the main question.
Exactly. I can give all of those details.
So would you like to try them together as well, and let me know how they work for you? But yeah, I think the takeaways here will be with this type of pairing is if you have a little bit of a saltiness in your cheese, you may want to counteract it with a little bit of sweetness in your wine. Yeah, I think actually saltiness, I don't know if you find it as well, makes the wine even richer than it is. It has that ability.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what do you think about your pairing? Did you have it?
Oh, lovely. The wine actually carries sort of quite a stone fruit character with it. So you get some apricots and you get some peaches in there as well. And I don't know whether this is something that you would necessarily recommend, Svetlana, but I often have dried fruit on the cheese board, and will quite happily put apricots on the cheese plate as well. So I think it's quite interesting how those flavors complement each other as well.
Well, that's funny you say that. Yes, I would tend personally to go for something like that, like dried fruits and nuts maybe. I don't necessarily need to have anything with my cheese other than a glass of wine. But if I were to go for something, I think I would tend to go for dried fruits and nuts. I'm not very much kind of a chutney person. That's a personal thing. But yeah, I like sweeter things. Out of the genre of membrillo, quince, and things like that. And yeah, apricots, because you find those flavors in some wines as well. I think those would be very nice with the cheese. And again, that would be the nice sweetness to add to the salty cheese. Yeah. Excellent. So we enjoyed this pairing. I think I'll get thumbs up from me. They're great friends. They still work together. Those French people really know what they're doing, I think.
Absolutely, the Australians aren't doing too bad a job either.
Oh, good. Excellent. Where did you get your wine?
Actually, I went there are two wine shops just up the. Well, actually, I'm in London at the moment, so I have a wealth of wine shops to select from, and these were two that I just happened to pass on my route home today. I had a meeting in central London, so I came on the way back, stopped in a couple of shops and picked these wines up.
Well, if anybody's interested, I'm sure they can find by name online. Like these things. Yeah, absolutely easy to find. So excellent. Let's move on to our third combination. I can't believe how quickly time goes when you're having fun. So we still have one more to try.
Okay.
So it's going to be a red wine and a sheep's milk cheese situation.
I think it's quite an interesting point. This is probably quite a good moment to mention that we often find that white wines work better with cheese than red wines do. Yeah. And I think typically we all have been brought up thinking that red wine and cheese are the perfect pairing. They're not always, and we've had 2 white wines that have gone really well with the cheeses that we're pairing. But I think actually white wine works better very often with cheese than red wine does, and I think we have to be a little bit more careful. But this is what I'm trying to say: we have to be a little bit more careful when we're trying to match red wine with cheese than perhaps we do with white wine. White wine is a bit more universal and and is a little bit more forgiving, whereas red wine we need to spend a little bit more attention on the pair that we're coming up with.
I absolutely agree with that. Well, first of all, thankfully, we've moved on from that old-fashioned thinking that only red wine works with cheese. Absolutely. Thank goodness to that. And like you say, today we've had 2 beautiful white wine and cheese combinations that are great. And yes, white wine is a little bit more forgiving because it doesn't have the tannins, right? And the tannins can be really, really tricky. And they can kind of interfere and play havoc with many things. Yeah. So you have to be careful with them. But today, because this is kind of our first time doing this type of event, we decided let's go with a classic in case somebody hasn't tried it yet. So we decided to go, in my case, for the traditionalists, with the Ossau Iraty and with a lovely Bordeaux. Here we go. This is from our shop. Again, you probably can't see that. I'm going to try to, no, it just doesn't work. Well, trust me, it's a Bordeaux. It's from Haut-Medoc, Chateaux, Cissac. So a beautiful, beautiful Bordeaux. Yeah, so nice. Let me tell you in just a few words about the cheese. In case somebody hasn't tried it, it's a must. Ossau Iraty is one of the most classic French cheeses. It's definitely the most classic sheep's milk cheese from France. It's from the Pyrenees. And the Pyrenees are known for sheep's milk cheeses, but this is kind of the granddaddy of them all. So it's a must try. Ossau Iraty comes in a relatively large compared to some, if we compare it to Valencay type of wheel, but small compared to Swiss wheels of cheese. So it's about 3 to 4 kilos in size and matures for, well, if you can get it over 6 months maturity, you'll be getting a lot more flavor. So the kind of more mature you can get it, the better. But that's where you can slightly adjust for your wine, maturity-wise with cheese. So my Ossau Iraty has been matured for at least 8 months. So it's got a lovely, nice flavor. Texture-wise, it's firm when I press on it, but it does have give. So it's not hard, it's firm. If it has a little bit of a bounce to it. Color-wise, it's ivory. So if I compare it with my Munster, which was a cow's milk cheese, it doesn't have that creaminess in color to it. It's got a natural rind, which you can potentially eat if you enjoy rinds. But personally, I find kind of this dry natural rinds maybe not as enjoyable as the rest of the cheese. So I tend to not eat them. But it's not going to do you any harm if you eat the rinds. So in terms of aroma, very nice and sweet. And I think I almost detect chocolatey notes. Absolutely gorgeous. I think it's so full on. I can just smell it for days. And if we smell the rind, there's going to be a little bit of earthiness. And it has that typical slightly funk to it or something on the rind as well, which is very typical Ossau Iraty. I can detect this cheese just by smelling the rind. So it's beautiful. Now, if I taste it, a very smooth paste. That's what I love about it. When you massage it on your palate, it works into a very smooth paste that's got lovely, lovely nuttiness to it. Very complex, light caramelly notes. And it's just gorgeous. It keeps going. It's got a very good length to it. But I wouldn't call this cheese a sweet cheese. So it's got the sweetness, but it's not necessarily sweet. And that's where we have to be careful as well when pairing with wines, because sweetness can make the wines go a little bit thin. Am I right, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sweetness can detract. That's one of the reasons why we always try and pair. We always try and pair sweet food with sweet wines. It's very difficult to match sweet food with wines that are dry, because it just takes away from the wine. It takes away a little bit of the richness, and it takes away some of the fruitiness. So it's always good, if you've got sweet food, try to go for a sweet wine to pair with it. So yeah, you're absolutely right there. I think what should work with this pairing is, because you've got those tannins, and you've got those tannins that will cut through the sort of denseness of the cheese. You've also got the weight of the wine, the fact that it's sort of a fairly full-bodied. You're drinking a Bordeaux, which will be primarily made from Cabernet Sauvignon with perhaps a little bit of Merlot in there. It'll have gone through quite a lot of oak aging as well. So all of this contributes to the body of the wine, gives it a lot of weight, and therefore you need a rich, dense cheese to work with it. But to make sure that the wine doesn't overpower the cheese doesn't overpower the wine, you've got the tannins there which are going to help cut through the cheese and leave your palate nice and clean and fresh at the end.
Yeah, so I find this works beautifully, and thank you so much for giving further details on that. I think cheese is thankfully slightly different to, let's say, just desserts that are purely sweetness upon sweetness upon sweetness. Whereas in cheese, we find a little bit of sweetness, kind of a nutty undertones and whatnot. And then there will be saltiness. In each cheese, there is salt, whether you kind of detect it or not. And thankfully, that will contribute back to giving the body to the wine, I think. So, but you have to be careful. You don't want it to be too tannic. You don't want the wine to be too heavy and overwhelm the Ossau Iraty, which is still quite a delicate cheese. I know stronger tasting sheep's milk cheeses. Ossau Iraty is not necessarily one of them. It's not gonna bite your tongue in any way or anywhere else on your palate. It's very elegant, it's very beautiful, it's very Moorish. I think it's just a beautiful cheese. And Claire is going to be having a similar cheese to Ossau Iraty. It's the English version of, or as close as I could think of being close to Ossau Iraty. So she's having sheep Rustler. And yes, it's a fantastic name. It is from Somerset, and it's also a pure sheep's milk cheese. It's made with thermized milk. It's got a natural rind, similar kind of situation, and it does have that smoothness on the palate. It's a tiny bit more rugged than Ossau Iraty, but not too much. So, but in terms of flavor, Claire, would you agree? It's got the nuttiness and the caramelly notes, and it's super, super complex.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. The cheese has this really lovely nutty character to it. As you said, caramel as well is another flavor characteristic I'd associate with this. It's dense, it's smooth, it's rich. So everything that we talked about the Ossau Iraty having as well, and therefore your Bordeaux blend working with that. Now I haven't got a Bordeaux blend. I've got it's a 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. So we've got similarities in the grape variety. It's from Argentina though. I wanted to explore some more modern perhaps styles of wine to go with the cheeses. But you talked about maturity in the cheese, and we can match that with maturity in the wine as well. So this wine is a 2018, so it's got 4 years of age on it. And as wine ages, it takes on sort of dried fruit, leather, nutty caramel characters. So again, what we're doing is we're matching the flavor characteristics in the cheese with similar flavor characteristics in the wine. So the older the cheese gets, in theory, the older the wine could get that you would pair it with, and it can work beautifully and work very well. And actually, this pair, I'm really pleased with this. I've not tried this wine before, but it works really well with the cheese, and exactly as I'd hoped. The tannins are cutting through the cheese really quite nicely and resulting in a nice, fresh, clean finish on the palate.
That's wonderful. And actually, funnily enough, my Haut-Medoc is also 2018, so we have the same age of our wine. That's great. But yeah, I love this combination. And if I have a big giveaway for everybody tonight is, if you have a bottle of red wine and you want kind of a no-brainer cheese to go for, aim for sheep's milk. For mature sheep's milk cheeses, they generally tend to work better with red wines. Red wines, of course, can be all very different. There's lighter ones like Pinot Noirs, and then there's more complex, and then very, very kind of heavy Amaronis and stuff like that. All of that can play into the equation. But if you have just a nice bottle of Merlot or Bordeaux, I meant to say, or any kind of similar type of wine, just go for a mature sheep's milk cheese, and you're very likely to hit the jackpot or be very close.
Yes.
To a very lovely flavor combination. So we've done all of our combinations tonight. I think we had a great experience and hit a few high notes with our pairings, and I'm just really, really excited that it all went well. And I hope whoever watched this enjoyed this experience and they took away a lot. Do you have any other tips that you wanted to share with everybody before we wrap up?
I think we pretty much covered it all, to be honest with you, Svetlana. I think we've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to say, and I think that the key take home actually is to explore and to experiment and just, you know, give it a go as well, and don't worry too much about it. If you taste the cheese and wine together, it doesn't work, don't worry about it, move on and try something else. You know, there's lots of opportunities out there for exploring and trying different wines with different cheeses. Some will work, some won't necessarily work, and I think we've done really well tonight in that we've got all six.
I think cheers to us.
I was going to say all six of our pairings have worked pretty well, and I'm very happy to help. If anybody's ever got any questions, then just get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to share any advice I might have.
I think I'd like to echo that and say absolutely the best part of all of this is to have fun and to experiment and learn about your palate, because what we're working with is our two unique palates and what we like and maybe have grown to like and not like and things like that. You guys will be very different. You'll have a different palate and different experiences. So feel free to experiment and see what works for you. So definitely would like to echo that. And if you have any questions for me or for Claire, please feel free to ask them in the group. Send them in a message to us. We'll be very happy to answer. Claire also has a website, which is?
I do casestudieswineschool.co.uk. So if you go there, all of my contact details are there. You'll have my email address. You can WhatsApp me as well. I'm more than happy to answer messages by WhatsApp. Yeah, exactly. Just go to the website. All my details are there.
Awesome. And you run courses for wine lovers at a certain level, or is it for anybody who wants to learn about wine?
I have courses for all ranges. So from anybody through from beginners who know nothing about wine to Master of Wine students who are at the other end of the scale. So I have everything available. My courses are all online at the moment as well, so you'll be able to get details about how they work. I send out samples, I send out books, and as I say, I have levels 1, 2, 3, and I do various other events as well, which might be of interest.
Excellent. So fabulous. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a